Hello and welcome to Shauns Take, brought to you by the Keystone Sports Network. Here are your hosts, Jim and Shaun.
Hello and welcome to Shauns Take. I'm Jim Galante. He is Shaun Gold. Shaun, another week in the books. Last week, we did okay, but the big note was Penn State finally covered, although it was in a loss.
We have been, I think, waiting all season for a cover to happen with the Penn State Nittany Lions. And, it was unfortunate to see them lose that game because I really did think they were going to win that game. But, we got a cover, and at least it's something that we got right.
The moral victory, right? Well, I think Penn State was looking for more than just covering the spread, but at least they did that with the 1 point loss. That is now 4 losses in a row for them, Shaun. Every one of them by one score.
It's hard. And one score is crazy here too. And especially, going back to Oregon, if they won that game, who knows where Penn State would be right now? I don't think it'd be 4 consecutive losses though.
I don't think so either. In fact, there's probably an argument that they'd still be undefeated had they beat Oregon. Still looking to hit their stride, but the fact is, in all 4 of these losses, they had the ball in their hands late in the game with the opportunity to win. And they failed every time.
And that's been my big problem with Penn State, too, is just you can't trust the offense down the stretch. And, now we're getting different quarterback play and everything, but it's been the same thing the past couple of years is there's offenses you trust at the end of a game. Penn State, for me, just hasn't been one of those teams. And until they can figure that out, they're capped at a really, really good team, but they're not going to get to that elite level until they can close out games.
Well, the fact is, with a new coach on the way, everything is off the table, going to get erased. It's going to be a fresh start for good or for bad. We don't know which it'll be. So how about we look forward, and to celebrate the Nittany Lions covering, we won't have them on our board this week. Of course, this is their bye week, Shaun, so we'll talk about them next week when they'll be on their way to Columbus. That's going to be an interesting spread there. But we still have a week of games here. Let's take a look at them. We're kind of heavy with the Southeast Conference here, so let's start there. A nice matchup. Ole Miss at Oklahoma. They each have stumbled a little bit. Both very good teams, Shaun. Pretty good offense you think of when you think Ole Miss. Pretty good defense going on with Oklahoma.
It's always interesting when you see a great offense versus a great defense. Which team is going to win that battle? And Jim, I got to go back to last week. Ole Miss played Georgia really, really tough. And the reason they lost that is because they played no defense. If they played an ounce of defense there, they would have beaten Georgia. And we'd be talking about Ole Miss as, probably a number 2 or 3 team in the country right now. I still like Ole Miss a lot here. Oklahoma's looked really good, but I think Lane Kiffin is going to have his squad ready. There's rumors about Lane Kiffin to Florida. I think he wants nothing more than to say, I'm the coach here right now. Maybe he does go at the end of the season. Who knows what's going to happen? But I think he has unfinished business at Ole Miss, and I think he wants to get over that hump. So I believe he's going to be very motivated for this week. And I still do think that Ole Miss is a team that should win this game, and they're better than Oklahoma. And I'm going to rock with Ole Miss in this one, Jim.
I'm going with Ole Miss also in this one. And it's one of those games you realize that part of this spread is the home field advantage for Oklahoma. Oklahoma, a 4.5 point favorite. I like Ole Miss here for a lot of the reasons that you put out there. One quick note, though, on the coaching shuffle at the end of the season. With the timing of the schedule and signing day for the recruits, teams are going to want to get that coach in as quickly as possible. When you have a coach, though, who's going to be in the playoffs, that changes that whole dynamic. Is the new team ready to wait for that coach who's probably not going to leave a playoff team to take a new job? All right, let's stay in the Southeast Conference. We got a top 20 team in Missouri at a top 10 Vanderbilt team. Vanderbilt actually a 2.5 point favorite in this one, Shaun.
Well, Vandy is clearly looking the part right now. A huge win last week. And, Diego Pavia has been one of the best stories in college football this year. Vanderbilt as a whole has been one of the best stories in college football. And they've had tough games too. A win against LSU, they lost to Alabama, but that's still a tough matchup that they were really in that game more than the score would say. It was in the fourth quarter when Bama really pulled away against them. So I like what I'm seeing from Vanderbilt. And being at home, that stadium is going to be absolutely rocking. That's a game I would love to be at just for the crowd. The student section, the fan base. This is one of the biggest games in recent memory for Vanderbilt. Being ranked in the top 10, the atmosphere is going to be crazy. Missouri's a really good team, but Jim, I like the story of Vanderbilt, and I think they carry this momentum into this week at home.
An absolutely fantastic story with Vanderbilt. However, I like Missouri. I kind of like the quarterback. I like that running back that they have. A lot of good things going on with Missouri. This feels like a must-win for them. It really does. I'm going to take Missouri in this one. I like that incentive when it's a must-win game. All right, we're sticking with the Southeast Conference. A lot of ranked teams, a lot of ranked games. Texas A&M, they've worked their way up to number 3 in the country now, Shaun? They're playing a team that I know you've liked since the start, which is LSU. LSU's the team coming off that loss to Vanderbilt. And Texas A&M on the road at LSU, a tough place to play. A&M is still a 2.5-point favorite.
Well, as you said, I was really big on LSU coming into this year, and that has gone down and down as they picked up 2 losses in their last 3 games. But Jim, what I have to point out in this one, Brian Kelly, like him or hate him, love him or hate him, I guess I should say, is 17-1 at home in night games during his LSU tenure. Whatever it is, he wins there at night. And I think Death Valley is one of the most incredible atmospheres in all of college football, especially at a night game against a ranked opponent. I think the crowd is going to be huge. It's got that same Penn State whiteout type of feel where the crowd really does add into this matchup. So I'm backing, the proven track record Brian Kelly and LSU have had at night games in Death Valley. And I think they get a win here, get their season kind of back on track. They've lost 2 of their last 3 against 2 very good opponents. So I'm not down on this team yet. They do need to play better. I think this is a week where we really see their potential.
You mentioned Brian Kelly, and I was glad you did because I was going to also, for a little bit different reason, with these coaches losing their jobs, especially at Penn State, where it seemed like a perennial 9-10 win team, and the coach can't take them to the next level. That's become the conversation at LSU with Kelly. I'm thinking he personally needs this win to put that kind of talk away. You mentioned some of the other things at home, at night, LSU. Again, they could be a playoff team if they could win this one. I'm going with LSU also. All right, let's make the shift from the Southeast Conference to the Big Ten. And with a couple of teams off this week with byes, this one's the interesting game. Illinois, still trying to hang in there. They're in the top 25. They are at Washington. Washington, unranked, but a 4.5-point favorite in this one, Shaun.
A super interesting spread when you break it down that way. Washington was a really popular pick last week to cover against Michigan, and they ended up getting blown out 24-7. Michigan handled them pretty easily. I think most people are going to be questioning, why is it a 4.5-point spread in favor of Washington this game? But I think it's set for Washington to have a really good bounce back week. And I've liked Illinois. We've talked about how Illinois was, kind of supposed to be this year's Indiana. Illinois has dropped off a little bit. Obviously, they got blown out by Indiana, took on another loss. And I think the market, I'm going to listen to the market in this one, saying that Washington is due for a bounce back week, due for, a sizable win, 4.5 points. That's a decent spread, especially when you're going, unranked versus a ranked opponent. So I think from the travel to Washington being in a bounce back spot and the market saying that Washington kind of clearly is supposed to be the better team in this matchup, I'm listening to all of that, and I like the Huskies in this one, Jim.
I'm also going with Washington. I'm glad you mentioned the travel that Illinois has to do. Going to the West Coast, I do believe that is a factor for teams. And I do like this Washington team. I know they had the tough loss against Michigan. I don't like overreacting to one game, Shaun. So I'm looking for Washington to bounce back in this one. Hey, how about we go to the Big 12 for our final game? The undefeated BYU Cougars. That's right, undefeated, ranked number 11. They're knocking on the door of the top 10. They are at Iowa State. Iowa State, a favorite of a lot of people going into this season in that crazy Big 12. I could probably say that about several teams that they have their group of supporters. Iowa State, a 3.5 point favorite at home in this one, Shaun.
And Jim, another spread that kind of pops out, at you when you look at it: undefeated BYU, unranked Iowa State. BYU's the underdog in this one. It's another spread just like Washington that really stands out on paper. The 11th ranked team in the country is kind of deceiving here. I really think that BYU should have lost to Arizona a couple weeks ago. I think there were, missed opportunities, missed calls, missed coaching. You could point out a lot of things on why Arizona probably should have won that game. So I'm not as big on BYU as, their record and rankings say. And same thing, I'm going to listen to the market here. Market's saying that Iowa State, even matchup at home would be -3. They're giving them 3.5. So they're saying it's an even matchup, at home, but you're actually a little bit better because we're going to give you a 0.5 point that you need to cover to get more than the field goal. So I think Iowa State's in a great spot in this one. I think it's going to be a hard road game for BYU. I think their first loss of the season should be coming this week. And with that, I think Iowa State is capable of covering the spread.
Every year there's a charm team, especially in the Big 12. BYU, I think that's the team this year. A little bit of a charm going on, a little bit of magic. I say that keeps going with BYU, especially with that 3.5 points, Shaun. I love that extra 0.5 point. All right, Shaun, that is it for our show this week. Fingers crossed for a big one. Next week, we'll come back and do it again. Hope you'll join us.
Keystone Sports Network.